everybody. Welcome. I'm Danny Graves of the Department of Theater Arts and Dance. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. The Hendrix Murphy Program Theater Arts and Dance Guest Director Residency is one of the longest continuous running programs at our college. This year's guest will be our 29th director of the 32 residencies. 2 have come twice. In 1 year, we brought playwright Romulus Linney, movement specialist Meade Andrews, and scenic designer Henry Kerr. A program that has made a tremendous impact on our students, our department, Murphy, and our community. After 3 years of intensive negotiation with her agent, Ashlie Atkinson, you have no idea,
Sorry.
is with us to direct Liz Duffy Adams' Wet, or Isabella the Pirate Queen enters the horse Latitudes. Ashlie is a 2001 Theater Arts graduate of Hendrix College. She holds a 2 years professional actor training certificate from the Neighborhood Theater in New York City, 2003. I think she's also won our Young Alumni Award.
2014.
2014.
I'm no longer young enough to win that.
She was the winner of the 2005 Theater World Award for Breakthrough Performance, nominated for the Lucille Lortel Outstanding Lead Actress and Outer Circle Best Featured Actress for her role as Helen in Neil LaDuke's Fat Pig. She's also the winner of the Hendrix Alumni Murphy Playwriting Contest with Leslie Dancer for her play Wives of the Circle 5. She's also the spokesperson for Gwenny B, Netflix for Clothes. She's performed at Yale Rep, BAM, OVIC in London, the Roundabout Theater, the Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., the Long Wharf in Los Angeles, just to name a few. Her special skills are not limited to, but include roller derby and playing the saxophone. Her TV credits include Law and Order, 30 Rock, one of my favorites, Nurse Jackie, Odd Mom Out on Bravo, and Crashing on HBO. Her film credits include Inside Man, directed by Spike Lee, Wolf of Wall Street, directed by Martin Scorsese, Bridge of Spies, directed by Steven Spielberg. She joins us after having just completed work on Spike Lee's next film, Black Klansman, on her way to perform Imogene in Imogene Says Nothing at Yale Rep. Please welcome Ashlie Atkinson.
You make me sound so fancy. And I'm here with like phone notes, which he's already secretly shamed me for. I'm really excited to be here and doing this show. And we're already pretty deep in the process, so it was really interesting to be like, oh right, I have that thing where I talk about what the process was this deep into the process. So it was sort of a little mini retrospective for myself. So when we had sort of nailed down that this would be the year that maybe that I could come and be a guest director for the department, Danny offered, at my asking, some limitations. Because, otherwise you're any play, anytime, anywhere in the world. It's this huge thing that's impossible to pare down. So I asked Danny, talk about what's helpful to you. So limitations are something that when I was a student, Rosemary Hindenburg talked about a lot. The idea is that your limitations are what free you. Mm-hmm. That in the right theatrical atmosphere, anything can be a hobby horse. And so I wanted to know what limitations there were, because then I would be free to work within those limitations, and that would be really helpful to me. So Danny laid it out like this. He said, I would like to have a show that is 7 characters or less. I would like it to be on 1 or 2 sets. I think he said I would like to have less than 200 light cues, which they've done shows with more than 200 light cues, which is a crazy thing to say, but It's true, and I think we'll come in under that. Maybe just, but we'll come in under that. And then I had my own sets of limitations that I put on top of that, which I wanted strong female characters. I wanted it to be an ensemble cast. I wanted to use the revolve, because the revolve is such a neat thing that I've only seen in one other theater when I was working in Hong Kong. They had a revolve, but like I've never encountered that in an academic setting before. And the first play that I did here, called Pride's Crossing, where I played English Channel swimmer, we used the revolve in sort of a memory play fashion, where as she went back in her mind, the revolve would go and it would turn to her as a 12-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. It was really, really neat. I also felt a bit of an obligation as like the Arkansas kid that went to New York and then like is coming back to bring a little bit of that New York avant-garde sort of queer performative thing with me. I don't know, I felt like I just kind of had to. I was like, so this has got to be something that I wanted it to be like a, ooh, can we do this? Oh, let's do this sort of feel to the show. But also, I wanted it to be a queer avant-garde show, not just because it's challenging, but also I got really into this play called Bent, and I think I talked about this a little in my queer theater lecture that I did earlier this month. But there's this great play called Bent, and it's about Kane's like, yes. It's about these characters that are two homosexual men who are in Dachau, I believe. They're in one of the concentration camps. And it's this beautiful, moving play about how one maintains or tries to maintain their dignity and their sense of identity in really difficult circumstances. And there is this absolutely gorgeous scene where these two men are basically just moving rocks from like these big, huge things, from heavy things, from one side of the stage to the other. And they're crossing, and they get like 3 seconds, each time they cross that they can speak. And it's a love scene. And it's the most beautiful, moving thing. And I thought, God, that's great. Like I'm really interested in exploring these ideas of queer love as it relates to identity, as it relates to adversity, and how it can survive in challenging circumstances. So I've been thinking about that. And then I also wanted something that was fun for all the crews, not just the actors. I was like, sometimes you see plays and you're like, well, they're not gonna have to build anything, they're just gonna shop. It's like pants and a shirt. Like, nobody wants to be on costume crew and go buy pants and a shirt. Like, that's not fun, That's not fun for anybody. Like, I don't want the set to just be like pulling armchairs out of a thing, like, whatever. Like, so I was, those were my limitations. So then there's this great resource in New York called New Dramatists, which is a place for the playwright. And they sponsor fellowships where people develop their playwriting talents, and they churn out, they're also a licensing place like Samuel French. So they nurture playwrights, and they have like sort of their fingers in all the actor pies around New York, and they bring in actors to work with the playwrights, to workshop things. It's a really great environment. And they have all these plays, and the people that run it are super knowledgeable. And so I went in, and I've worked with them a few times before, helping them workshop stuff. And there's a lady named Emily Morris, and I said, Emily, okay, this is what I want. And I ran down my list and Danny's list, and she said, go to lunch and come back. And I went to lunch, and I came back, and she handed me 20 plays, just like unbound, like 20 scripts. And so I sat there, and for 2 days, I read those 20 plays. And then I was like, none of them are exactly right. Some of them were too modern shirt and pants, sit on a couch, and I wasn't really interested in that. And then some of them were so far out that I had a feeling that I would never be able to do them in the time constraints. Like there's a trans playwright named Basil Kremendahl, and if you haven't read Basil's work, I really recommend it. Basil does things like writes a Western in which the characters' genders are referred to as noises, as opposed to he and she, and you are to develop that noise together and as a cast and deal with language and gender that way. And I was just like, okay. I mean, that's really awesome, but nobody's got time for that down here. We just don't have the time. So I went back to Emily and I said, and so she said, okay, come back tomorrow. And so I came back tomorrow, and she gave me a stack, and the play Wet, or Pirate Queen Isabella Enters the Horse Latitudes, was right on top of it. And it had everything I wanted. So it's 7 characters, 3 female, 3 male, and 1 that's somewhere in between. It's about pirates and sailors, so there's really great set opportunities and really great costume opportunities. And a lot of it's in verse, which is just like a plus. And there's drag, which is also a plus. So I just thought, this is it. And there was enough there that I thought was pushing what is conventionally and traditionally accepted in theater, but it also deals with love throughout adversity. Because this play is about a lot of things, but above everything, it's about love. And I flash back to when I went to school here. And I thought about if I could name one quality that I feel like the students at Hendrix and the faculty at Hendrix and the department has that I don't see in other programs and in other theaters, it is the fiercely protected quality of empathy. There is an empathy and there is a drive to not just observe characters from afar, but to get into their skin, to become them, to grapple with their problems. And I thought that was necessary for this show. And then one of the great opportunities, right, in like a bevy of great opportunities that the Hendrix Murphy Foundation provides, is that they allowed me to come down last year and meet a bunch of folks that were in the department and that might, be trying out for the show and all that sort of stuff. And when I was reading Wet, I remembered that not only did I meet some really strong women from the department, and I was like, okay, that's great. Those women are strong and they are specific. Now, specificity is like your friend. You can't, I think people think that being an actor is like, I can be everyone. It's like, you could, but you don't need to be. What you need to be is yourself. And so much yourself that there's not another you. And so you're bringing you to everything. That's why we watch Hamlet over and over and over and over, because every actor's Hamlet is a different Hamlet, because it's theirs. So what I enjoyed was not just the strength of the women I met, but the specificity of the women I met. And when I read Wet, I thought, yes, the people I met could be lady pirates. And yeah, we could put them in a drawing room comedy. We could, or we could do like School for Scandal. But why not make them pirates? If you could be a pirate, right? But also I have to say that the young men that I met during the lunch, I'm going to sidebar and say that patriarchy affects everyone, not just women, and that there is a narrowly circumscribed set of rules that the patriarchy says are required to be a man. There's toughness, there's bravery, there's machismo, there's all these sort of things. And what I felt even just sitting at the luncheon with these young men was that they were willing to risk those assertions and to be brave in their vulnerability, which I have to say is a pretty uncommon quality in young men these days. And it was so necessary for this show, for them both to understand, not just innately, but explicitly, what these narrowly circumscribed set of rules are, and to be able to subvert them in front of their peers, which is huge, right? Like, you're not just like going, 3 towns away and doing this show. It's like, no, your roommate's there and your roommate's parents are there. Like, it's a big deal, and it requires an extraordinary amount of bravery. And I just felt like I was meeting kids that could do that. So I sent the script to Danny and Anne, and they got back to me the next day and were like, oh, this is great. We love the verse, the beauty of the language. I knew that they would respond to this beautiful verse that Liz Adams wrote, but also to the opportunities that were in it to do something really, really fun. So Danny and I started talking about the set, which involves like multiple emails back and forth, and then an illustration on a cocktail napkin that Danny sent that was phenomenal. And he apologized for it, and I was like, that is absolutely, you are right in my work aesthetic. Like, this is how I choose to operate. And one of the two of the challenges that we talked about right off the bat, and challenges are just opportunities, I don't want to say challenges, I guess, because it sounds like it's not something I was relishing dealing with, and I totally was. There are a lot of, everything takes place, almost the entire show takes place on a boat, and on the deck of a boat. So it's one set, and then there's sort of a tempest moment at the beginning. In the tempest, there's this storm that shipwrecks all the people on a Prospero's island. So there's a tempest storm moment at the top. And so I wasn't sure how we were going to do that, how we were going to build this boat for the girls to be on. And then when they're on the big boat, there's a lot of intrigue, there's like missed connections, there's all these sorts of things. And I wasn't sure how to isolate those moments, how to give them places that were private, where they could speak, where people could speak to each other without being overheard by the rest. So I expressed both of these to Danny, and Danny beautifully, and this is like one of the many reasons why I like working with Danny so much. He said, we were talking about that Tempest scene, and I was like, so I don't know, I was like, I think maybe we could have like this blue fabric, and then like a boat on it, and then the boat could split in half, and it could go out the Voms, or whatever. And I was like, because it's like the Tempest. And he said, yeah, you don't ever build a set for that scene in the Tempest. And I was like, that's true. That's really true. He said, Shakespeare, and then he just went, Shakespeare would just be sick if you built a scene, built a set for that scene in the Tempest. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know the guy, but you might be right about that. So we managed to solve, I hope, you tell me later, both of these problems, these challenges, these opportunities, with the same design, in which there's multiple levels. We ended up with a set that has an 8-foot platform. So there's an upper deck that has the ship's wheel, where you would imagine the mast to be coming out of, which then drops to a deck that's about 1.5 feet above stage level. And then down further, extreme downstage, there's a hatch, right? And so that hatch at the top of the show becomes a floating platform on which the actresses, the pirates, are sinking. And so that happens, and we get to have, instead of my super literal moment, a beautiful theatrical moment in which the pirates spy their next opportunity. It's pretty exciting stuff. I don't want to talk too much about what the play is. I don't want to give stuff away. It's not a show about spectacle, but there's some really great, there's some fun stuff that happens, you know. There's some reveals. There might be a costume moment or two. There might be some exciting entrances and exits, but mostly it's about how you have to throw away who you assumed you were to find out who you really are. And to find out who you really are often requires loving someone or something. And what you have to risk in terms of people's assumptions about you in order to do that. And it happens all over the play. There's a lot of relationships in this show, and there's a lot of I don't have time for that. That's not right. This is, you know. But when you're faced with mortality, as a lot of these characters are, because it's a comedy, right? But like they are on a ship that's taking on water every minute. Like no one's in a good spot in this show. They're in pretty dire circumstances, which always reminds me back to Bent, right? That like there's a point that that I believe that humans reach, and I think it's a really compelling thing that we can't stop touching, like sort of like a loose tooth. We keep coming back to it theatrically again and again and again, of what happens when you've got nothing left to lose. You know, how there's a strange thing where when all of your options are narrowing, there's this strange moment of Spirit's grace, you know, that comes and you finally say, there's nothing left to do but the right thing. And I think that's the journey that these characters take, where there's nothing left to do except the thing that they should have done all along, which was to be honest with themselves and the people around them. Anyway, so, does anybody have any questions? Is that something? I don't know. I can talk more. We have, I can certainly talk more. And y'all can just raise your hand if you have a question. Yeah?
I have a question. You said that the play is in verse.
Yeah, there's a lot of it that's in verse. Unrhymed verse, but verse.
How does that affect the quality of the show, or like what's it been like working with that, with the other elements that you're describing?
Right. I think it's interesting because where we're at now and what we did to get there are very different. I think in general, the verse quality adds a sort of dreamlike, lyrical obviously, but this sort of existing both in and out of reality quality, which is great for a show that's not in any historical moment.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
It's sort of an ahistorical pirate play, so it's a pastiche. Yeah, so there's like we're pulling from reality, but we're also pulling from tropes. You know, like Pirate Queen Isabella did not exist, but the horse Latitudes do exist. They're bands around the equator, and Danny's gonna get mad at me if I say it. He's like, don't say it. I'm gonna say it. All right. So the horse Latitudes are named so because when ships would go, they would run out of water, and they couldn't they couldn't spare the water to water the horses anymore, and they would just jettison them. They would toss the horses overboard. And I say that, I know it's brutal, but that's the world of the play. And the world of the play, even though we have a lot of fun and there's a lot of ridiculousness in this show, it's important to remember the context of these characters and where they're coming from. The sailors have been fighting a war. So there's a lot of beautiful lyrical language, but it's talking about things like what the city smelled like as things burned. You know? It's these really violent images translated into this really poetic language, which means that the first order of business once we started rehearsals, I have some of my gang up here, is we sat and we went through every single word. I did a Shakespeare tour with Sam Mendes called The Bridge Project, and that was the first thing we did, which I loved. We spent days at the table, just every single line being like, what does this mean? No, but what does it really mean? And why are you saying it? And it was grueling, but necessary. Because I think that verse can be death, theatrically, if you don't go into it, you know? If you just sort of like make it sound pretty and swoop over the meaning, you know, which I think is a tendency that we sort of have. I know even when I'm reading it sometimes, if I find verse in a play that's been coupled with prose, I just sort of, okay, now when do people start talking to each other? You know, it's a terrible thing. But I thought that to examine why it goes to verse, what those lines mean, and why they're saying them, and who are they saying them to, and then finally, what are the stakes of saying them? What do they have to gain? What do they have to lose? Were all things that we examined at the table. And we stayed at the table longer, I think, than most shows do. We were at the table for over a week. We were averaging about 7 pages a day in a 3-hour rehearsal, just sort of digging into them. And then we got up, and then we started the blocking process, and then we immediately forgot all the things that we wrote about at the table. Because that just happens, right? Like, there's cycles of learning and forgetting. It's a 2-step forward, 1-step back process, always. You get up from the table and you forget what you did at the table, and then you remember and you go forward again, and then you get off book, and you're like, okay, I know the lines, and then you start actually acting, and the second you connect with the real thing emotionally, you forget the lines. Like, it never fails. The first time that you're actually looking at somebody and you're actually talking to them, you're like, oh God, I have no idea what I'm saying. Line, please. And then you have to do that embarrassing thing where you're like, line, and then they prompt you with half the line, and you say the half the line, and then you go, line. And they just feed you the whole, it's terrible. It's a really embarrassing thing. But it's crucial. You have to get through it. These are all, one of the things I love about theater is that, like, you can't do it until you do it, and you can't do the next thing without doing the thing before it. Like, the only way is through. And I think it's true in life, but it's super true in theater, you know? You just gotta go through. You can't be an expert right off the bat. You can't. I had an acting teacher that used to say that an amateur could exhaust a role in 2 days, and a master could work on it for 10 years and still find things. And it just has to do with the level of engagement, right? We see that in an academic setting too, right? Like, you can read a short story and you can be like, well, it's about this, you know, like My Day for Banana Fish is just about like a girl and an older man talking on a beach. It's like, well, Yeah, but it's also about the Seymour Glass and the Glass family and his history of depression and, you know, all this sort of stuff. And you can engage on things, even historically, things can be engaged with in deeper and deepening levels. And that's something that I'm trying to be actively working on with the cast, is going back through and deepening these layers and creating connections. Because really, we all know what a good play is, right? Like, we're all actually excellent theater critics. If it's good, you sit like this. And if it's bad, you sit like this and you look at your watch. Like, we all know, you know? And what that is connection. And one of the greatest things I learned at Hendrix about acting was that when there were scenes that I didn't want to do in a play, if there was a scene that, like, every night when it came up, I'd be like, oh, it's because I didn't know what I was saying. It's because I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know who I was talking to, and I didn't know what it meant. And if there was a scene that was my favorite, it was just because I knew exactly what I was doing. Why I was there, what I was doing was 100% clear for me. And the goal, as I said, the only way is through. I'm still not there. I don't know if I'll ever get there. I don't know if anyone ever gets there. Is to make every scene a scene that I look forward to. Every scene being the thing where I can exist on multiple levels at once, where I know what I'm doing, where I'm in control as an actor, where I'm able to inhabit this character fully. So as a director, we've tried to make that a thing for the actors, which is, by the way, crucial when you have as much trust, physical trust placed in you as the department has placed in me and these actors. We have an 8-foot platform. We have swords everywhere. There are so many swords in this play. There's ropes. People are hiding. Like, there is so much stuff that, like, there's so many things that we have to be professional and adult about every day. And we've just been trusted with so much. I never did a show that had, like, all of these elements in it at once. I will tell you professionally, if I did, the equity representative would be, you know, would just be like, hey, how's it going? You know, just checking in. But the department is phenomenal, and we've been able to implement this structure with the students where everything is safe. There's a safe spot. There's one safe spot where your weapons go if they're not on your person. You never, you know what I mean? You never draw on anybody. We only draw when we're practicing a move and we know, and there's space and attention given, or you keep that stuff holstered. And, like, it's like gun safety with a theatrical, if you had to, like, perform it. Because it's not enough for them to be safe, right? They have to be safe and know that they're safe. So it's not enough for Yasmin to be able to draw and hold her sword next to Avery and be safe. Avery has to know that he's safe enough, that he's not moving, or, you know what I mean? That he's not afraid of that gesture, that no one is afraid. Everyone knows exactly the distance that things need to be and correctly implement that. Otherwise, nobody's getting lines out. Otherwise, the whole show is people jumping in shadows. You know? And also, like, you guys can't be afraid. That's another thing, right? Like, there's this concept called negative empathy, where, like, if you set a cup on the edge of a table where, like, a third of it's hanging off, nobody's gonna pay any attention to anything you say after that. They're just gonna be like, move that cup. I'm gonna move that cup. Do you think they meant to put that cup like that? Like, is that an acting choice, or did they just find something? I mean, you guys see it when an earring falls off of an actress, right? You're like, oh my God, that earring fell. Oh my God, when's she gonna pick up that earring? She's not even on that side of the stage anymore. Who's gonna pick up that earring? Like, are they gonna go into that scene change without that earring getting picked up? Oh my God, what's the costumer gonna do? Did they have extras? Like, you're not, there's no way you're paying any attention to the plate. So it's like, we'd say, you know, if something happens, just pick up the earring. If you, and you're a human, you know, pick up the earring. But what's truly embarrassing is how, I mean, give us this, right? We're like, we're artists, we need this. You get so excited when you do the thing that, like, as a normal person, you could do easily all the time. Like, you come off and be like, did you see me? I just found a moment to tie my shoe. My shoe was untied. I just found a moment in the scene, and I just tied it. Right? You're like, and yeah, your friends are like, oh, yeah, I saw that. I actually thought it made that line better. Like, maybe we should just keep your shoe untied. It's really absurd. But this is the thing, right? Like, we want to give, I certainly feel like I was given opportunities at this school that not only were beyond anything that I would ever get to do professionally, but that also prepared me professionally. I got to play roles that were astronomically beyond what I would get hired to do, just in terms of scope, you know? But in them, I learned how to listen, I learned how to be a professional, I learned how to be safe, and that's all. What's going on? I can just see people's eyes like, what's going on? And that's stuff that I don't know gets focused on other places. I have worked at places like Yale Rep, and Yale Rep is a great program, but there's something about, I hesitate to say this because of course I want all the resources that the department can get, and I think that the resources here, but I want to say that the resources here compared to what I deal with generally in New York are delicious. And what's done with them is phenomenal. Like, if I do a show in New York, there's not a kabuki. There's a thing called a kabuki, right? Which is like things hang and then they drop, right? Yale Rep spends $10,000 on a kabuki, right? So, which is a thing that, yeah, so they can press a button and the thing goes, shoo. We have an arkabuki, which is two.
Don't tell them.
Oh,
What a copyright.
we'll just say it's manual. We'll just say that. We'll say it's a manually operated kabuki, an arkabuki. Trademark Danny Grace, 2018. But that's what really excites me. I think one of the things that that everyone in this department shares and has shared since I went here is the idea of that everything can be a hobby course. Like, it's theatrical for a reason. We're not making films, we're making theater. So what is the point that we guide the audience? I won't say lull because that sounds like we're fooling them. We guide the audience into a suspension of disbelief by using theatricality. So that once we say, this floating platform is a boat in a storm, and we support that and we act it fully, then they're much more likely to believe the next thing because they trust us. And it's this relationship of trust between the audience and the people who are making the show that is pivotal, I think, to a good performance. I think we're going to get there. I do. I really hope so. I feel pretty confident. I think we're in a really good place. And I really hope you guys will all come and see the show. you know, do you have posters by there?
I was gonna show a poster.
Please do.
You're done? You done?
I think so. I mean, it's only till.
Really good. The show is the 21st through the 24th. That's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 7:30, and then Saturday at 2. You can get your reservations now. We're expecting big houses, aren't we?
Yeah.
And of course, it's free.
Can I show them
Yeah.
the poster the kids made? So I'm really excited about this poster. I really wanted something that sort of represented an irreverent female busting into like a really male historical narrative perspective of seagoing. Right? So it's great. There's like this really like old master sort of ship and sea thing, and then she's like, ruining and or enhancing your view of it, depending on your perspective. Right?
That's right. Another great student design poster for the
Yeah.
Department of the Arts and Dance. I hope y'all come. Let's thank Ashley when we're trying to